Hello, class. In this lecture, we'll cover Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14 through chapter 5, verse 10. And the title here on the title page is Christ's Superior Position and Priesthood to the Levitical priests. So let's look at verse number 14. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. Look at the commentary. Christ has passed out of the heavenly sphere through the lower heavens and into the very presence of God. So he's ascended back to the right hand of the Father in heaven. Christ did not come into the presence of God to minister briefly, as did the Aaronic priests. Rather, the Greek perfect active participle dialeluthata, who has passed through, is translated into English, who has passed through, indicates Christ has ascended into heaven and ministered continually in God's presence on our behalf. So the Greek perfect means something that's accomplished and has happened and has ongoing effects. So he's there at the right hand of the Father, effectively functioning as our high priest, an intermediary between God and man. Jesus is his human name and emphasizes his humanity. Son of God emphasizes his deity, we see in this verse. So he's both, as I just mentioned. Due to this, the writer urges the readers, let us hold fast our confession of faith in Jesus Christ, as we saw back in chapter 3, verses 1. Verse 15, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. So the writer to the Hebrews he gives reasons the readers should hold fast to their confession of faith in Jesus Christ. Christ is not a high priest like Aaron under the Mosaic law, who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. The Greek sympathesai means to sympathize. It's translated to sympathize, means to suffer along with. Because Jesus suffered as a human, he can sympathize with us humans who are suffering. In addition, he is a high priest who was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. So in his humanness, as he walked this earth, he was tempted by Satan, just as all we are, and as the ones he was writing to in his day, to those Hebrew believers, they were being tempted too. So since Christ possessed true humanness, he could be tempted just like we are and like they were, the readers. Yet he did not succumb to that temptation. Because Christ endured some temptation, he patiently endured it. He can be a merciful, faithful, sympathetic, and understanding priest for us as he sits at the right hand of the Father. Now we'll look at verse 16. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So, due to Christ's superior priesthood, superior to the Levitical priesthood under Moses, the author exhorts the readers to take advantage of Jesus' superior availability. The readers have the freedom to draw near to the throne of grace at any time. That's not the way it was under the Mosaic law, but we have access to God, the Father, through Jesus Christ at any time and any place. Second, we see they can come without fear or doubt, but with confidence, because Christ has made them acceptable to God because of redemption, what he did when he became a human and shed his blood for us, we're acceptable to God. The author urges the readers to come to Christ, their high priest, so that they might obtain the needed help they can provide. God wants to help us. So if we seek him, we can have access to his grace. These Jewish believers needed to make use of Jesus to appropriate grace and mercy to get them through their persecutions and sufferings. Whenever a believer stumbles in his spiritual life, it is because he failed to appropriate the grace available to him. So we always need to understand, we need to seek God to appropriate that grace. When we try to solve our own problems, we can make really bad mistakes. And when we try to act independent of God, we make bad mistakes. He wants us to come to him. And that's what we see encouraged here by the author to the Hebrew believers of his day. Look at chapter 5, verse 1. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed on behalf of men in things pertaining to God, in order to offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. He can deal gently with the ignorant and misguided, since he himself also is beset with weakness. And because of it, he is obligated to offer sacrifices for sins, as for the people and also for himself. So under the Mosaic system, those priests after the order of Aaron and Levitical priests, they had to offer a sacrifice for his own self before they could even offer sacrifices for the people. That's not true for Jesus. But let's continue. Verse 4, and no one takes the honor to himself, but receives it when he is called by God, even as Aaron was. Look at the commentary. The high priest must be genuinely human. So we see prerequisites for a high priest. And Jesus became human, took on human form. The high priest had to be appointed by God to represent men before God. And so that's Jesus was as well. The high priest must be compassionate and sympathetic. Yes, he could be, because he suffered in his humanness. Aaronic Levitical priests had to offer sacrifices for their own sins, demonstrating their true humanity. Yes, they were sinful. Look at verse number 5. So also Christ did not glorify himself so as to become a high priest, but he who said to him, the God the Father, you are my son, today I have begotten you, just as he also says in another passage, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. In the days of his flesh, he offered up both, talking about Melchizedek, both prayers and supplications with loud crying and tears to the one able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his piety. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from the things which he suffered, and having been made perfect, he became to all those who obey him the source of eternal salvation, being designated by God as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So we see here talking about Jesus. Like Aaron, Jesus did not glorify himself to become a high priest. God appointed him. This is the commentary. Christ was genuinely human and had compassion due to human sufferings. However, Christ is uniquely designated by God as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. And by the way, Melchizedek was not only a priest, he was a king, and so is Jesus. And here we see the sources for this lecture, the Dwight Pentecost book, A Faith That Endures, the book of Hebrews, applied to the real issues of life. And that concludes this lecture.